All right, we are back here on the podcast, wrapping up our 2025 March Madness coverage. Florida is our national champion here, and we finally delivered the good basketball. So we're going to break it all down with the great Troy Mauriello from FS1's Breakfast Ball, the researcher there. Troy, welcome back. How are you?
I'm good, Mike. I feel like you and I deserve some credit for the amazing three games that we got this weekend because 2 weeks ago we said, all right, there wasn't a lot of upsets in the first round. The Sweet 16 is going to be awesome and the Elite Eight is going to be awesome. And then that was kind of chalk and those games were kind of blowouts. And we said, all right, now we got the four best teams. It's going to be awesome in the Final Four. And man, did we get an awesome Final Four, two great games, and then an amazing national title game. Maybe not the cleanest played national title game ever, but like we're going to remember Houston and Duke forever, and we're going to remember that national title game for a long time as well. So, really fun, great to get some awesome basketball to end the season.
Yeah, for sure. And we talk about this off the air, but I'm jealous right now because Troy actually got to be in the building in San Antonio. He was there on Saturday night for the Final Four, so you got to see a doubleheader in person.
Yeah, yeah, it was. I mean, seeing the 4-1 seeds, a historic Final Four in San Antonio. San Antonio is an awesome city. You got the Riverwalk, obviously. Seeing the games in the Alamo Dome, having some good seats. I wasn't there as a media member, just there as a fan. And man, after that Houston Duke game, I have never seen anything like it. First of all, you're watching basketball in a football stadium. That's already strange as is. And the way that that game ended, where people were kind of getting ready to shuffle out of their seats there with about 5 minutes to go, 6 minutes to go, when it looked like it was going to be a Duke romp on the way to a 10, 15 point win, and just we're looking at each other like, what just happened at the end of that game? I've never seen so many fans on one side of the stadium just absolutely stunned, and then just a complete party with the Houston fans on the other side of the arena. I've never seen anything like that. And I mean, the first game was awesome too, but again, I'll never forget that from that second game.
Yeah, that second game is gonna go down as an all-time real. I mean, like I was not fortunate to go to the Final Four. I was watching on TV, and then it gets down to about 8 minutes left. Duke's up 14 points. I'm like, it's close to midnight. Is this thing a wrap? Should I go to bed? So I stuck it out a little longer. Then I saw one of the craziest endings we've ever seen in March Madness here. And like, I know all the hubbub. We talked about this on the pod over the weekend. It's like, oh, the bad call on Cooper Flag there for sure. But Duke had a million ways to win that game. They just couldn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the call was wrong. Let's be honest. That was not an over the back. But you look at Duke and they had what was it, a 7 point lead with 3 minutes to go, or 9 point lead, I think, with 2 or 3 minutes to go. You got to close that game out, and you can't leave it up to a bad call by a ref. And give credit to Houston for hitting those free throws. I mean, that takes a lot of guts to hit those two free throws there, and then to get the stop defensively as well. So. Yeah, I mean, the call was wrong. I don't think anyone could really argue that. To call that in that spot is strange. Houston did get the rebound, so I guess that makes it a little bit better. But if you're Duke, you can't put yourself in that position. And I think Duke is just absolutely killing themselves right now. They got to be just kicking themselves right now to be watching that final game and saying, "Man, we were certainly better than Florida. I think we gave that game away against Houston, a team that we feel like we were better than." Like Duke right now probably thinks they should be celebrating another national title. And man, all it takes 10 minutes of real time to just completely tank your season. And we saw that with Duke on Saturday night.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny how this tournament saw a lot of sort of like teams do it, having something happen to them and then have it, they do something and have it happen to them the next game. So it's Texas Tech as well. Houston,
Hmm.
that final game, they have the epic comeback against Duke to win. They have the epic collapse against Florida in the last few minutes to lose the title game. And like, if you're like a Houston fan and you see that final possession just burning your brain for the rest of the time, it's going to be so painful because. Obviously, all the credit to Florida for coming back in multiple times in the tournament to win the game, but I cannot remember a worse final possession than the one Houston had. Whether it's walking out the floor, 20 seconds to go, LJ Cryer kind of hovering around the logo to about 8 seconds
Hmm.
left, and then settling for a three to win when you didn't need a three to force overtime. You could have just driven to the rack on a second chance, and they're crushing on the offensive boards all night. This was a miserable end of game execution from Houston.
For sure. And if you're going to take the three, if you're sharp there, you gotta let it go. Like you gotta let it go. Like at that point, you can't be pump, or pump fake. Like just it was so uncharacteristic too, because this is a Houston team that it has a lot of experience, a lot of NCAA tournament experience, and to just completely blow that last possession was crazy. But you're absolutely right. The refs were calling everything. I think there were 26 fouls called in the second half of that game. Go to the basket there, and like you said, they were dominating the offensive glass. Go to the basket there and play for overtime. At the worst case, maybe even get a foul and you make a basket and you take the lead. I didn't love taking a three there. Of course, hindsight is 2020, but they're going to be kicking themselves too. You look at their last four possessions, not getting a single shot up. Like you played a minute and a half of basketball, or a minute and 21 of basketball. You had the ball four times, and all four times you turned it over. I mean, that's just it's so tough to. I mean, you can point at the last possession for sure. That was awful, but you had three possessions before that as well to get it done. Credit Florida. Like it wasn't like it was all self-inflicted mistakes on Houston's part. Walter Clayton, who we're going to talk about again, had the amazing closeout, which forced what would have been the game-ending travel there, or the game-ending play, really. So credit Florida. They played some awesome defense, but man, if you're Houston, like those last, it's like, again, like I said, it's like 5 minutes of real time of just poor execution, and it just tanks your whole season. And you got to feel for Houston, because they were just, I mean, the script seemed like it was destined for them to take home the national title.
Yeah, for sure. I also think, like you mentioned, like how crazy it is that like Walter Clayton, who's known for his offensive ability, has like probably like the worst half of his college career in the first half. He
Yeah,
finally gets going in the second half here. It's not him hitting a big shot; it's him making a defensive closeout, which he's not known for. He's not known for his defensive like star power. You'll get to him more in a minute, but like to think that like he had the perfect closeout on LJ on the shot there, and like to the point where it would have forced a travel, and Houston was just unaware of what was going on. An incredibly strange finish to that game.
yeah, so strange. And yeah, like you said, Clayton did not have it scoreless in the first half, 11 points in the second half. But even in the second half, it wasn't like he was the Walter Clayton that we had seen in the Elite Eight and the Final Four at the back-to-back 30-point games. Just to make a defensive play there and to not let your offense affect your defense, which, when you're college kids, that's going to happen from time to time. To really be locked in on that final possession to win the game for your team was incredible. And you look at Walter Clayton, the last three games that they played, he had 11 points in the second half against Houston. He had 20 in the second half against Auburn, and he had 22 in the second half against Texas Tech. So 53 second half points in their final three games. You talk about closing out and being a closer for your team and an absolute legend. Like Walter Clayton was all of that and more for them. 53 points in their last three games. I mean that's what some guys put together for an entire couple of games, as a whole.
Yeah, I mean that look that CVS got at the end of the game of Kelvin Sampson just staring in shock at the end of that game just says a lot too, because like this was sort of, they had the miracle comeback. They dominate most of that game against Florida
Mm-hmm.
here. They basically the home court with all their fans there. That building was pretty red on Monday night, and
Yeah.
you look at like what's going on there, and like you just know this is a guy who's been a basketball lifer. He's the closest he's ever gotten. This is his first time he's in the title game, and then they just can't come through here. Like that one's gonna be make you sick to your stomach for a long time.
Exactly. Yeah. And you feel so bad for Houston, like you said. Kelvin Sampson's a guy who you really feel like deserved it. I mean, you talk about building a program from the ground up. They put out a video, I believe, before the Final Four, showing basically their arena in the first year of Kelvin Sampson, and there's empty seats. There's whole sections empty in that arena, and now they've built into a national powerhouse these last couple of years under Kelvin Sampson. So really building it from the ground up, building an incredible basketball culture there in Houston, or rebuilding an incredible basketball culture there in Houston. It just, like I said, it just felt like the culmination. Playing in San Antonio, 3 hours away from Houston, you've got the majority of the fans there. You've got this team that's been playing together for a couple of years, and you've got this coach who built everything, who really, is about sitting on 800 wins now, and is about to, get the crowning achievement of his career. And it looks like it's going your way, and then it's just like, again, like a final, 10, 20 minutes of real time that you didn't play your best basketball. You did made some uncharacteristic mistakes, especially on the last possession, and it all comes to an end. You feel so bad for them, because, Houston has been a power for sure over the last 5, 10 years. They finally get to the national title game. They get back to the Final Four this year, but they're not a traditional blue blood that is here every single year. They're in the mix, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. Like they're going to bring some guys back, and they have an awesome recruiting class. They're going to be in the mix again next year. But when you're not a traditional power, a traditional blue blood, there's just no guarantee that you get back again. And there's no guarantee. And like, I don't know. I hope I'm wrong because I really want to see Kelvin Sampson get one, but like that just felt like it was their best chance. And that it felt like if it was ever going to happen for them, it was going to happen this year, right?
Yeah, you would think. I mean, I wrote a story for Fanside about this, about some of the heartbreak the Houston's had here. I mean, think back to like the
Yeah.
five Slamma Jamma era where they had like multiple Hall of Famers on that team, and then
Yeah.
they go to three straight Final Fours, two straight title games, don't get a win. Most notably the upset against NC State where Lorenzo Charles like has the last second dunk and
Hmm.
like Valvano's running around looking for somebody to hug. And, like
Hmm.
this is something where like there's a lot of misfortune. I feel like it's fallen that program, whether the Final Four that year being in New Mexico and having to like manage the altitude when they go up and down the floor like crazy. He's having to slow down
Hmm.
intentionally. Like this situation, like running into Baylor a few years ago when they got to the Final Four,
Yep.
like, it feels like they just can't catch a break when they get this far. I think they're the most they had the most appearance in the Final Four of any program without winning one.
Yeah, yeah, and this year it felt like, and I wanted to touch on this earlier, but it felt like if you would have played this Final Four out 20 times, every team would have won a handful of times. Like there was no, I mean, it's four one seeds. It was the four best teams that we had. Like any of these four teams, I think could have won it if you just would have, rolled the dice and figured it out 20 times. I bet every team in this pod would have won a couple of times. Houston had as good a chance as anyone, and to win that game against Duke and to get through Duke, who seem like this, unbeatable force, and to get through them and to play your style of basketball where you're just relentless and the game looks like it's over and you just wear them down, wear them down, wear them down, and then eventually they make the backbreaking mistakes at the end to get through them, and then to play a Florida team who you're evenly matched with. I know that Florida was a slight favorite, but it was really a toss-up game, and to control that game for 35, 36 minutes and then just have it all come crashing down, and you're the one making these mistakes and these backbreaking mistakes, and you're the one getting worn down and having the lead dwindle away and dwindle away. It really sucks for them because I hope they get back. I really do. But to have the team that they had this year, to have the chance that they had this year, and to get past what felt like that Goliath, and to kind of lose it then the next game, it's tough to rebound from that, I think.
Let's go to the Florida side here because not we feel like we want to short shrift the champion a little bit here and like make
Yeah.
a lot of credit for coming back both times tournament. Like I saw people complaining online like, oh, like Florida, the Kings only showing up for 5 minutes and doing enough to win the game. Like, you know what? Like this is the format they're in. They played well to win the one game. First half, you got under unsung hero of that first half was Will Richard, who was the only guy hitting
Hmm.
shots for Florida in the first
Yeah.
half, keep them in that game and put them
Hmm.
in position to make the comeback here. And you got like like Clayton sort of gets the headline here. This is a very deep, traditionally good college basketball team that now is won its third title. I think they're the only program in college sports to win three football and three basketball titles.
Yeah, yeah, and going into the year, certainly we're not a title favorite, but you mentioned showing up for 5 minutes and figuring it out, but like that's the name of the game in the NCAA tournament. Like I think we talked about it last week. You're not going to play six perfect games in a row. Like something is going to go wrong for you at some point over the course of playing six games against six really good teams that are in the NCAA tournament. Something is going to go wrong for you. And for Florida, I don't think that they played their best game against Texas Tech. They certainly didn't play their best game against Houston, and they just found a way to win. I mean, look at these deficits that they came back from. They were down by 12 with 15 minutes left against Houston, down by 9 with 17 minutes left against Auburn, down by 10 with 7 minutes left against Texas Tech, and down by 6 with 15 minutes to go against UConn. So, 6+ point deficits all in the second half. And every single one of those games, they close on a run and they figure it out. Like that just speaks to the resiliency of this group. They were never out of a game. And, four of their final five games, they had to make some sort of a second half comeback on varying levels of difficulty. That's what you need to do if you're going to be a champion. You've got to show that resiliency that if you don't play your best game and if you're down and if the chips are down in the second half, late in the second half, You figure out a way to make the plays to win, and that's what Florida did, and that's why they're standing here as the national champion. I mean, again, you could make the case Florida was the third or fourth best team in college basketball this year, but at the end of the day, they were their most resilient, and that's who wins in March.
It is who wins in March here, and I know there's off the court stuff with Todd Gold I don't want to get into here, but like I know like that's not our place to investigate and figure out what's going on there. But like in terms of on the court stuff, like the youngest coach to win a title since Valvano in '83, he's 39 years old. Like he's got Florida positioned to be like a powerhouse in the SEC for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And with that, with the money, obviously with the SEC football money, Florida will always be in whatever the premier conference is in America in terms of football. So, you don't have to worry about money. You'll always be in a great conference. And yeah, he's 39 years old. You would hope, and I don't know if there's a better, like, I mean, maybe there is, but there might not be a better job for Todd Golden to take. Like, he could be there for the next 20, 30 years if he really wants to be. And you talk about, again, a team that's won three national titles now in the last 20 years, kind of pushing their way into that kind of blue blood adjacent territory, I think, where certainly not a blue blood, but, are in that conversation. They've done that now in the last 20 years. And we'll see if they can kind of build something now over the next couple of years. Maybe not necessarily to repeat as champs, but, to go to another Final Four, to make another run, because that's kind of the name of the game now. But yeah, they've got the money, they've got the coach, they've got the young coach, they have the resources for sure, and now the winning is going to come with that, and we'll see how much they can kind of continue to build on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them a blue blood. You kind of pushed away into the blue blood class. Like they're sort of like I
Yeah,
call them like a new blood, where like they're like
yeah,
sort of like in that class. Like Baylor is becoming a prominent basketball school. Gonzaga's in that group because they can't win
hmm
yet, and like those programs that like are not the traditional like big names, but like they are having March Madness success and like they're popping through. Like they're getting deep, and every once in a while they're winning one.
yeah, and I mean, like if Florida gets two more in the next 10 years, let's say, I think there's a conversation then, like,
Yep.
five in 30 years. Then you're on that level of UConn essentially, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we'll see.
We'll see for sure with them here. And I obviously want to touch on Walter Clayton a bit too, because we
hmm
talked about him last week. And like, this is such a great college basketball story. This is a guy who we talked about, zero-star recruit out of high school, gets football offers from a bunch of big schools, goes, plays 2 years at Iona under Patino. He has, 7 points a game his freshman year, wins the conference player of the year as a sophomore, goes to Florida, first team All-American like this year, wins the national championship, goes out on top, potentially playing his way into the NBA draft first round here. So this is the kind of stories you only really get in this tournament, which is a great.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of the only story that you can get when you're dealing with college basketball, right? Like a kid that came in and no one knew who he was. Like no one knew who Walter Clayton was when he committed to Iona. And now 3 years later, after that, he is a national champion. He is, a March Madness legend. And that I think is what's awesome is, it doesn't just have to be the Cinderellas, the Jack Golkis, and the Doug Ederts, who are the March Madness legends, and the Ali Faroukmanesh, the upsets, the Cinderella team beating the high major, high seed, and going on and making a run. Like, it doesn't just have to be those guys. It's also a guy like Walter Clayton who came from that background, who came from Iona, a smaller school, but now is on the big stage with Florida and is gonna, I mean, going to go down as a March Madness legend. Like everyone is going to remember when you bring up Walter Clayton, whether he has a successful NBA career or not. When you bring up Walter Clayton from now on, it's going to be, wow, that run in 2025 with Florida, man, 30 points in back-to-back games, making the big play late, hitting some crazy shots to win in that Texas Tech game. Like, he's got those moments now. And that's kind of the other side of the transfer portal, the NIL era type conversation that maybe doesn't get touched on as much. Is like, you're getting these kids now who they don't have to play for these, low majors, like I said, and make this crazy upset to become these March Madness legends that we remember forever. Like, these kids can go from a smaller school, transfer up, and next thing you know, you're, the most outstanding player in the NCAA tournament, and you're winning a title, and you're becoming an all-time legend. So that's kind of the other aspect of it too.
Yeah, that's for sure. I think it's a lot of fun with that story too, because like he's gonna be forever associated with with the iconic March Madness moments. I mean, most outstanding player at the Final Four speaks for
Hmm.
itself here. And
Hmm.
I do want to touch on the NBA angle you brought up here
Hmm.
because I know that like there's a hot debate going on social media right now about like, is this guy a first round pick? Like, is he an NBA prospect that's legitimate? Like, and we talked about last week a little bit how NBA scouts value youth, size, and physical attributes, which he does not have those things. Where like
Hmm.
NBA teams, if you left out of them, would probably say, we'll take the 6'6" wing out of the Power Five school who averages 7 points a game because he has physical tools we can work with.
Yep.
This is a guy who makes big shots. He is a very dynamic clutch player. He's a leader. He has areas to improve for sure. If he was 2 inches tall, I think he's for sure a first round pick. But like
Hmm.
this to me feels like a guy who's going to be in that Jalen Brunson, Fred VanVleet, Malcolm Brogdon bucket where like people don't take him for what he isn't and they ignore what he is and he ends up having a long career. And I guarantee you, if somebody who's a contender is smart and takes him, he's going to be in their playoff rotation next year.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And you talk about being a winner, winning at Iona and then winning at Florida. It's not like Florida was a bad team last year. They went to the NCAA tournament last year as well. And being a clutch player, like you mentioned, having that clutch gene. I mean, sometimes, yeah, like you said, you gotta look past the physical attributes and look at what you're seeing. The believe what your eyes are seeing here. And this guy in every big moment stepped up. He was an incredible leader for Florida. Look past the size, look past the lack of athleticism, look past the age, and look at the type of player that you're watching. And yeah, I think that absolutely he can have a awesome career as a bench guy, a third or fourth guy off the bench, and maybe even better. I think that could be kind of his floor as a bench guy, third or fourth guy off the bench, and play in the NBA for 10, 15 years. Like that would not shock me at all, just given what we've seen and I, at the end of the day, like you said, our scouts going to want to take that type of a guy or a kid who's, a 19-year-old project who has all of the measurables that you want, but who knows how he's going to turn out. He could be a great player. He could flame out in 3 or 4 years and be out of the league. At the end of the day, I think I would take a chance on Walter Clayton Jr. I think he ends up probably sneaking into the first round, I would hope. And I think some team is going to really get rewarded for taking him.
Yeah, like I said, I see the vision. I see like, like these teams that, are like don't know what they're doing basketball wise, have like a bunch of first round picks, like ignore this guy, say, we need a teenager
Hmm.
who we can mold
Hmm.
potentially a 3-and-D wing. And, like whether it's the Celtics or Oklahoma City or somebody in that mold says, like we could take Walter Clayton, have him come off the bench for us. And he ends up being like, like a key like player on the second unit for like a very good team.
Yeah, and that's another aspect of it too is when you're getting an older player who played a couple of years in college, who is now a couple in his early 20s, like you're getting a finished product. Like you're getting the type of player that is probably going to end up translating to the NBA. Like you mentioned, you take a teenager, an 18, 19-year-old kid, who knows how he's going to turn out. He could turn out awesome. He could, like I said, be a bust and be out of the league in a couple of years. Whereas when you draft someone who is already in their early 20s, who is a finished product, like that kid's going to be ready to play in the NBA right away. You're not going to have to mold him into anything because he's already got that level of experience. So I think someone should take a chance on him. And like you said, I think it's going to be one of these teams that's already in the playoff hunt that already has kind of an established culture, and I could see him really, really having a great career.
Yeah, I mean, for all those like, like mid-round NBA pick, mid-first round NBA picks who like can become, like, the measurable guys that we mold them. Like, sure, you'll find like a Kawhi Leonard in that
Yeah.
mix. You'll find guys like Giannis to a degree is not the same kind of college player, but sort of like
Hmm.
the untapped potential. But you're also
Hmm.
getting these guys in here, for example, like a Terrence Ferguson, like a Zaire Smith fits that kind of
Hmm.
role. Like these kind of guys who you take them because they played 1 year in college, they have athletic measurables, and they don't get developed properly. And then you pass on the guys with the, just proven college tracker because they're older and they're not don't fit the prototypical NBA build.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you mentioned, it's going to be a smart team that does that. It's not going to be one of these teams picking early on in the first round. It's going to be a team probably later in the first round that is already that already has that culture, that has that front office that knows what they're doing, and that team's going to get rewarded because they're going to get a kid that is a winner and that knows how to deliver in big moments and isn't afraid of big moments. And yeah, I think he's going to end up being a great player.
Yeah, and as a Knicks fan, I would love if he found his way, if the Knicks found his their way to get him, but I don't think he'll get that far.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But yeah, like a Knicks type player who I think would fit in awesome. But I think he would fit in really well on any team, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm saying that, like, especially with Brunson, like with the smaller point guard model,
Uh-huh.
like that'd be a great guy for him to learn from at the pro level.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's talk about a couple other odds and ends here on this one here. Do they all do the people who have said that college basketball is dead? The ratings say otherwise, because I don't know if you saw this, but we had massive TV numbers on CBS for the Final Four and the title game here. Nielsen final data, the Final Four had a average of 15.5 million viewers on Saturday, peak of 20.7 million viewers, 16.3 for the second game, 14.8 for the first game. It was the, I believe, the most watched Final Four in 8 years, and it's an insane turnout there. Title
Hmm.
game, for example, last night on Monday night, 18.1 million viewers on CBS on the Monday night window there. 22% increase from last year, the most watched since 2019. I know the numbers can get skewed because of the every other year it's on TBS, which is a
Hmm.
cable and is not as successful as the broadcast CBS slot here. Overall viewership of the tournament up 3%. People are watching college basketball. I now know the NBA snobs out there like go like the product is not as good, there's not as much skill, but like more people are watching these games than like NBA playoff games for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that you brought up the title game as well because I'm sure that there was people arguing, well, the ratings for the Final Four were only that good because Duke was in it, and Duke is what was driving that rating, and then you see the title game like you mentioned, and the title game had awesome numbers too. I think at the end of the day, people just want to see good basketball, and this tournament, like we had been saying all year was so top heavy with the top 10 teams and then the top four teams that there was some really high level basketball being played. And you didn't have to worry about load management, you didn't have to worry about all that in NBA stuff. And I won't get into that because that's a whole nother debate. But you know, people say that they love the Cinderellas and they say that they love seeing the 15 seed make it all the way to the Elite Eight, and they love seeing Loyola Chicago and George Mason and VCU and Butler make these runs to the Final Four. But I don't know if the viewership really reflects that. I think at the end of the day, people really like watching really good teams play basketball. And this year we got an awesome Sweet 16 and Elite Eight. Now, the games were not great, but the matchups were awesome, all high seeds against each other. And we got an awesome Final Four, and we got a great national title game featuring all one seeds. And people can say the chalk is boring, but the numbers speak for themselves. The chalk gets viewers. People want to watch good basketball. People love the Cinderellas, but at the end of the day, when you're watching a game that is, a 20-point game at halftime because the Cinderella is just overmatched, it's not a great watch. But then you're watching a game like Duke and Houston that comes down to the wire, or Florida and Auburn, that the shot making is at an NBA level and it's coming down to the wire. Same thing with Houston and Florida. That's, I think, what people want to see. So I think March Madness is all about the Cinderellas for sure. That's what brings the masses, you would think. But then when it comes down to who's actually watching these games, the Cinderellas make these big moments that we're gonna talk about forever. The 15 over the two upset, and the 16 over the one, and the 15 seed making the Elite Eight, and the 12 seed making the Final Four. We're gonna talk about those things forever. But when it comes down to viewership, it ends up being the teams that are the best and the best basketball.
Yeah, I mean, look at some of the NBA numbers over the past 5 years for the finals, and like I get it's different 7 game series, but even some of these potential clinchers here, like last year, 12.2 million for Mavs Celtics in game five, 2023, 13 million for Nuggets,
Hmm.
like 2022, 14 for Golden State Boston here. Like these are clearing numbers here on the
Yeah,
style game.
yeah, yeah, and even in those numbers that you mentioned, I mean, those are some big brands too. So you can't even say like, oh well, college basketball had their biggest brand in Duke playing, but the NBA you're comparing that like that was Celtics, Warriors, like those are some big name teams, big brand teams that should drive viewership and just are not. And the NBA's got a real problem right now because I think college basketball is only growing. Like college basketball is growing, and people can say what they want about, oh, the transfer portal is ruining college basketball and NIL is ruining college basketball, and I don't know who is even on what team anymore because these guys switch teams every single year. But that's not being reflected in the ratings, like like you mentioned. I mean, it wasn't just the final weekend, like you said. The entire tournament was up. Ratings for this entire season have been up. The Big East tournament, I think, just did its best final ever. Like these ratings are going up and up and up for college basketball. So people can say what they want, and the discourse can be what it is online. At the end of the day, that's not being reflected in the amount of people that are watching the games.
Yeah, I think to me, I think if you could figure out some way to, like we talked about last week with the portal, sort of like come up with, I think the
Mm-hmm.
contract model is the answer where, like you have
Yep.
this situation where like you have these like sort of, okay, going in, okay, we signed such and such prospect or out of high school to this much, or so and so out of the portal for this much. And like,
Mm-hmm.
here's a buyout. If he goes to another school, the other school has to pay us the buyout to get the player off our
Mm-hmm.
roster. Like, I think if you could figure something out with that, I think, and you have more continuity on the roster, it's not 700 guys in the portal the first day it opens. I think then you're really cooking with gas here. I think like the model itself can work, especially if you're having guys staying in school longer, building that relationship with the fans at the school and sort of
Mm-hmm.
giving you these big names and these casual games as opposed to saying, oh, it's Duke. It's, oh, like Tyrese Proctor is going back for his senior year at Duke, or like
Mm-hmm.
today, JT Thomas coming back at Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is great for college basketball.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you always want to have guys stay at school as long as possible. And I think, yeah, like we mentioned last week, having contracts and having it be having clarity in terms of, what these guys are getting, make it like pro sports, like make it very clear, this guy's getting this guy's getting that, this guy's on this type of a contract here, like give us the details. It's basically pro sports already at this point. We've completely taken the amateur aspect out of it. So lean into that and really make it be a pro sports model. And I think that would only be better. But in terms of the NIL and the transfer portal, especially, like we're talking about college basketball now, not year round, but like we're going to be talking college basketball throughout the month of April and into May because we basically have free agency going on, and I think that's great. Like it sucks that there's so much player movement, and we, like you said, we have to have some sort of a guidelines and some sort of rules put in place. That needs to happen for sure. But we now have free agency in college basketball, and I'm as big a college basketball fan as anyone, but from the time that the national title game would end or my team's season would end until June, July, August, like I'm not really thinking about college basketball.
Yeah,
Now I'm locked. What's that?
yeah, you might get the hate of like, okay, like the school will put out their list, okay, here's our recruiting class this year, and you get excited for like a day, and then like you forget about it again until training camp.
Exactly. And even that, like you're talking about kids that aren't, probably aren't going to be here until next year, like because they're, you're recruiting freshmen for next year, not even this year. So like I'm locked in now. Like I'm who's St. John's going to get? Who's my, the other teams in the Big East? Who's going to reload? Who's coming back to what school? Like it's fun. It's like NBA free agency or NFL free agency. It makes people talk more about college basketball. So we just got to have some sort of guidelines put in place and some sort of rules put in place. And this is a really good thing for college sports or college basketball.
Yeah, in terms of being like transparent here, like I don't even mean the money needs to be transparent. I don't think you need to tell who gets what money.
Mm,
It's even just term of contracts. Okay, here's a
yeah, yeah.
like, okay, like he signed a 2-year NIL deal with, let's say, St. John's, for example. Like, okay, like let's say you just brought in Bryce Hawkins, which they just
Hmm.
did. Okay, like Bryce Hawkins a 2-year NIL deal with St. John's, and like he's committed to us for 2 years, and I'm sure there's a buyout in the contract where they're like, if it doesn't work out, you can pay the buyout and send him on his way with the money, so he's not getting
Hmm.
screwed. Or like
Yep.
if like Kentucky comes calling again and says Bryce come back, Kentucky pays St. John's a buyout, and then he goes there.
Yeah, I think that's the answer. And it's really not all that complicated. And like we said, it's just clarity and it's just understanding, the terms of every deal. And it would significantly limit how many kids are in the portal because right now it's too
Insanity.
crazy. And yeah, there's too much. And we've talked about it before, like the portal should have opened up Tuesday. Like boom, it's open now. The Final Four is over. Let's open the portal now on Tuesday, and let's get to free agency now. And in terms of what I just talked about, like imagine if the portal just opened up this week, and now we have this free agency period going on, and instead of starting 2 weeks ago where we're talking about all this stuff while we also have games going on, now we're just talking about all this stuff as college basketball fans. That extends the off season even longer in terms of things to talk about. I just think that model could really work for them.
Yeah, I think like having like sort of different lengths on contracts would be helpful because like then
Hmm.
there are big names in the portal, whether it's like a Bryce Hopkins or like a RJ Lewis or Pop Isaacs we saw just coming to Houston. You could maybe
Hmm.
say, okay, like I'll do 1 year so I have freedom to go pick where I go next year, or I can like hold out for more money and do 2 years. So like you would have like options on how to play the portal.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and again, that makes it even more like pro sports, right? Like these kids decide, do I want to go to this school for 1 year, and I have the flexibility to maybe make a move, next year, but then I'm only on a 1 year deal, and we'll see what happens. Do I want to sign a longer deal, a 2 year deal, where I have more stability, but then if I have a great year, I can't try to maximize that even more. Like it's more decisions, and it's again, it's more for us to talk about.
Yeah, that's definitely fun for sure here. I think we'll wrap up here. A couple portal moves here. I think obviously you guys got Bryce Hopkins. Pop Isaacs goes from Creighton to Houston, which is I think a big deal. We have some movement like in terms of other big names, but like I think obviously for you, I'm sure you care the most about Bryce Hopkins going to St. John's, which is going to be very exciting because we know how good he is from his time at Providence.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and we heard from Zach Braziller this week, who covers St. John's for the New York Post, saying, uh, other teams believe that Bryce Hopkins can get back to that all Big East level that he was at a couple of years ago. It's been now 2 years. Obviously, he had the ACL injury 2 years ago, and then never really got back. Played a couple of games this year, but never really got back. We saw the glimpses of what he was prior to that, but this is a kid who, yeah, is certainly at an all Big East level, and if all goes right, could even contend for an All American level. I believe we had John Rothstein saying that could contend to be an All American, and you pair him with Zuby Ejiofor, who's probably going to be the Big East Player of the Year, a preseason Player of the Year, and is probably going to show up on some All American lists to start the season next year. That's a hell of a front court to have, and that's a really really nice start. We'll see what other pieces they bring in, but Bryce Hopkins is a guy that they had been going after for a while. He ended up not portaling last year, and now this year they get him. And I would say that there's some concerns bringing in a guy like Bryce, who did sit out this past year and probably could have played if he really wanted to. And I would be more concerned about that. But we just brought in Kadari Richmond last year, who again there were the concerns about the effort and is he going to want to be coached up by Rick Pitino? And Kadari Richmond bought in right away and was one of the best players in the Big East and one of the more impactful players in the country. So I'm not too worried about Rick Pitino getting through to Bryce Hopkins and turning him into the best player that he can be.
Yeah, I think that's not worried with that at all here. I do think also like one last note here is like obviously, I mean, for one last thing, I think Houston, I think right now, and the key word on this is right now because we don't know if anyone's gonna hop in the portal or be excited about like get like whisper, hey, like you get a little more money, you come over here. Like I think like Houston getting like Pop Isaacs in as the LJ Cryer replacement, like I think with who they have coming back, I think they're the clear number one as of recording time next year.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's so hard to do. And I saw a million of these lists earlier this week with these top 25s, and it's always hard because you're predicting how teams are going to look, essentially 8, 9 months from now. When half the rosters, but it's even harder in the transfer portal era where who knows, like you said, if a guy's even going to be on the roster in a week, let alone once the season starts. We could even have some coaching changes still. Like think about we had Jay Wright when he retired. That wasn't until like the middle of April. Tony Bennett retired so late in the year. So like we could even still have some coaching changes. Who knows where that stuff goes? But yeah, Houston is probably the team to beat right now, and probably is the number one team right now. But it could all change. You look at continuity. A team like Purdue brings back a couple of guys: Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Coffin. They bring back a bunch of guys. So I think that's what I value most because I still think at the end of the day, continuity is what wins in March. Like you look at the two national title teams, Florida and Houston brought back a ton of guys. Auburn, same thing. Duke is, of course, the team of freshmen, but I think that continuity is what wins. So you look at a team like Purdue, you look at a team like Houston, who are bringing back a bunch of guys, and even a team like UConn, who brought back a bunch of guys. That's I think what ends up winning, and that's kind of how I would rank teams at this point, at least.
Yeah, I think the sleeper I'm watching on that front is BYU, because obviously they gave the rumored 8.5 million NIL to DiPasanta to get him to
Yeah,
come. And they have a potential lottery pick and Igor Demon, or who I think like has hinted like he's willing to come back, and they're throwing big money around the portal here. So like I know Houston is in, like that would be a wild Big 12 race if BYU just loads up and keep them in, and they have DiPasanta and they get some big names out of the portal, and like you have this heavyweight fight between these two like in the Big 12 next season.
yeah. If they can keep them in there, they're a team that shoots up immediately to I would say top 10, for sure. Yeah, they got obviously the number one or number two depending on where you look, recruit in the country right now. Yeah, and they have the money to throw around. That's really what's going to matter at this point is, can they? They're not going to match NBA money, especially if you're a lottery pick, but can they give enough to entice you to come back and play with this electric prospect and then go to the draft next year? That's the question for them.
Yeah, I would say that here. I mean, Devin declared for the draft. We'll see if he stays there.
Yeah,
So that's something to consider with this front here. I will say my final point here on anybody trying to do the preseason top 25 right now. Like, it's such a waste of time and effort because
yeah,
like the roster might change 5 minutes after you finish the post and hit send, because like, obviously this is not the same as it was where you had, okay, like these
yeah,
guys are leaving. There's only a one-time transfer rule, so you have a reasonable guess of who stays and who goes. And we know the recruiting class going in here. Now, like while the windows are open, guys can just hop in, hop out. Even the guys who are posting saying I'm staying doesn't mean anything. We saw with Officers Gene Aaron Gurley,
yeah.
his whole post saying I'm staying, and then he's in the portal like two days later.
Yeah, you gotta, if you're doing these, and I understand it's just content for these websites that they're trying to make, but you gotta at least wait until the portal closes to even try to project how teams are going to look like next year. Like you said, these guys, you can hit send on a post, and 5 minutes later, three of the guys on that team enter the portal, and they get two more guys, and now your rankings are all mixed up. It's not like it once was. It's always going to be a very very tough job to do. This day and age, it's not even worth it. I think my team St. John's is in like the top 10 in a bunch of them, but we could bring in a bunch of guys, we could lose a bunch of guys, and then all of a sudden that all changes. So it's really hard to put any sort of stock into these things, until, and like even the AP poll, like the AP, like how does the AP try to rank a team that has, you know
Well,
six of their top seven players are transfers?
the AP doesn't do it now. I mean, AP,
No, no, I'm saying like the preseason poll. Like how do they rank a team that has six of their top seven players being transfers? Like it's just all based on the transfer rankings, right? Like you don't even know.
yeah, it's like it's basically a lot of like hype, sort of like, okay, successful program, big name talent coming in, big time coach.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
There's like a model, like I saw on social media floating around here. It's like sort of like a rough template of like what almost every preseason poll looks like. It's scary how accurate that like just like joke posts end up being.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like random Big 12 team, team that lost in the Final Four that brings a couple guys back. Yeah, it's all, yeah, and that ends up being what the AP poll is, every year. This is a separate thing, but I think the AP poll, we shouldn't even do a preseason poll. Wait till like at least a month in, and then we'll start ranking these teams.
Or wait, they can't do that though, because the business of the sport says like we need to be able to advertise. Okay,
We
for
got, yeah,
sport,
uh-huh,
like okay, like here's the number one team playing. Like as opposed to it's like you ask the casual viewer like who are the best teams? Like, huh? Like you get
yeah,
the numbers. It's like okay, like I can follow. Okay, like this team's supposed to be good. I'll keep an eye on them.
exactly. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, the not everyone is a sicko like us who's paying attention to who's good and who's bad.
Yeah, they need the polls for that. But our time has come to an end. Always fun talking college basketball with you. Thanks again for doing the March Madness run here. People want to follow you on social media. How can they do that?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Troy Mauriello, Mauriello. Obviously, I'm a big St. John's fan. Post a lot about St. John's. We've got some big rumors for the Red Storm, as terms of who Rick Pitino is bringing in over this next couple of weeks. So definitely follow me on Twitter if you're looking for my takes on that.